Okay, so this wee video will just take us through the process of creating a graph in Microsoft Excel. Now, one thing I would say is it depends which particular version of Microsoft Excel you're actually using. So if you're using an Apple computer, the formatting might differ slightly. And my advice would be to go on YouTube if needs be, type in the particular version of Excel you're using, and you should find really good playlists there, taking you through the process. I'm sort of sticking to the Microsoft-based system here. That's the one that most students will be using, and it's the one that I'm most familiar with myself. I do recommend if you're having trouble using an Apple device or an iMac or the Mac and laptops, whatever, maybe just use a Microsoft device, like that maybe your brother, sister, parents have access to, or even in school. Just for doing these tables, you can then screenshot them and insert them into your document and then get back to using your sort of Apple device as required. Now, what we'll have to sort of do here is go to Insert, first of all, and you'll see there's a huge number of options available here. We're sort of most concerned with really what's going on here. You can see these sort of bar charts and line graphs and whatnot, and we pie charts as well. The one that we're looking for here is, again, this version of Microsoft Excel is the Insert Scatter, X, Y, or Bubble Chart. Now, if you hit the wee drop-down menu there, it's going to give us a number of options. And the one that we want really is just, we want to be able to plot our points, but we also want a line of best fit through that. Now, I personally would prefer like a smooth line of best fit through your points. So I would recommend to go to the line that showcases like a curved line of best fit, as opposed to the very straight points, which you can see in this particular graph here. So I'm just going to select that. And you can see, of course, automatically it's put this graph into my Excel file. Now, at the moment, that's not really much good to me. I need to, of course, insert the data. And again, if I go to the actual graph, literally select the graph by left clicking on it, and then right click, it's giving me a number of different options here. The one we have to select here, first of all, is to select data. And when you do that, you're given options. I'm just going to go here to add. And then you can see here, you can put like your series name and from memory, like that's just like the title. But I've just chosen maybe one of the most basic wind practical experiments, whereby we're analysing the impact of wind speed on the power output. So we can just type that in, impact of wind speed, power output. And of course, the X values here, again, the X has to be your independent variable. That's the thing that you're changing. That's going to be wind speed in this case. And the Y variables, that's going to be, of course, the power output. And then hit enter. And you can see, of course, that has enabled me to plot that graph. And you can also see when we come across the graph here that the title's in there as well. Let's hit OK. I just made these figures up, like, only just for sort of illustrative purposes. But you can see you've got your title in there. With the only other thing, we're going to add in some data now, because we do want to label our axes as well. Now, again, I think it's quite easy to do this in Microsoft Excel on a Microsoft device. So if we come across and left click again on the graph itself, you can see, of course, it is linked back in the wee colored cells there, showing the raw data. But I want to click this plus button here. And I want to hit this one here. You want to access titles. I think that's the one we can do. Yeah. And you can see, of course, that now gives me the ability to label each of the Y and the X axes. So the Y axis in this case for both wind and solar will always be the power output. And then look, what you're supposed to do, again, you lose marks if you don't do this in A-level physics and whatnot. You're supposed to do spacebar, / like almost like a division line, and then put in your respective unit, and that's going to be capital W for watts. Now, if you're in a school that's maybe utilising and happy to put the units in milliwatts, that's okay. Personally, again, in the school I teach, I would recommend keep it in watts. If you come back down to your x-axis here, of course, that's going to be related to your independent variable. And for my hypothetical investigation there, it's going to be wind speed. And again, must be a / and then just put in your unit meters per second. And that's pretty much it. If you've got those key things, the key things that I'm personally looking for when I see a graph is, number one, have you put your title? Short and sweet. So this is the effect of your independent variable. That might be number of blades, blade length, pitch angle, maybe it's the angle of a solar cell, light intensity, cloud coverage, whatever the case might be on power output. That's not going to change. All right, for all wind investigations and solar investigations, the power output is going to be your dependent variable. All right, so have you got a nice wee title in there? Have you labeled? Number two would be really, have you labeled your y and x axes? I think that's plural. Forgive me if it's not. So just make sure again you have labeled each of the respective axes. And then thirdly, again, this happens sometimes, just make sure again your graph has got that line of best fit. There's no point in just having 3 dots there. You do want to showcase the relationship between those variables by putting your line of best fit in. Now you can start to get fancy and whatnot now and maybe do a wee bit of shading and stuff like, you know, like by putting in fill and stuff. That's not going to impact the marks. It maybe just adds a wee bit of texture to your report, maybe makes the graph stand out a little bit more compared to your text and whatnot, maybe a lighter shade of grey or something. Look, I leave that up to the students. You can change those things at your discretion, but look, it will not have any impact on the actual marks you achieve. And of course, down beneath your graphs, then it is really, really important that you analyze the game. Whenever you straight after your graph, what we're looking for is number one, the trend. What does this particular graph illustrate? The second thing I personally recommend after you've done that there, is this what you expected? All right, so for instance, if you know your stuff from Unit 1, we should appreciate, of course, that the power output is proportional to V cubed. So we do expect, of course, that the power output will increase as the wind speed increases. That's okay. And most critical of all, after you've done those things, what's the impact on the client? So what does these results mean for the client in relation to their particular investigation? And of course, in the 2023 year, that is specifically your visitor centre. What do these results mean specifically to the client for your investigation? Of course, that needs to be discussed for both graphs, while you're doing solar or you're doing your wind. And for those students doing biomass, there's no need for a graph, and just don't worry about that. And again, hopefully that's been useful. Quite a straightforward process, and that's a skill set you can utilise really for the rest of your life in the university and even your career as well.